panel of the 2020 5th edition. I'm very much, I'm excited with what's going to happen here, because you just have to look to those that are sitting over there, and everybody knows what's going to happen here, and the topic is really interesting. And being moderated by Mark, it's going to be a huge success. I just hope that everybody that is not here also, that those that are following us online take the most advantage from what we are going to see happen here. And as you know, this is this panel is sponsored by Shearwater, and if you want to be the next one to take the dive computer, you have to come in 2026 for the diving talks. I think it's it's another reason for someone to attend the show. So thank you so much. Mark, please proceed.
Thank you, Arlindo. I'm really excited as well to chair this panel, because I think there's been a real sort of theme that has developed throughout the last couple of days. I think more so than in other diving talks. So I think that's really productive. And also I have a fantastic panel to have this discussion with. But it's not just a discussion amongst us. I want to get the audience involved in this, because, well, first question, what's missing from this panel? Women? Anything else? Young people. Youth, yes. Absolutely, yeah. We were just sitting around preparing earlier, and we looked around. We're a bunch of middle-aged men. So I think that is indicative. So thank you for pointing out the fact that we are a little bit unbalanced. So that's why I am going to get the audience involved, to bring in the youth and the female voices as well as the experienced middle-aged men. So I've got a list of questions. We might get through them. We might go off on a tangent, but let's get started. So the first one, are we doing enough to communicate the sense of adventure and exploration that drew us into diving? So I think I'll start off with Phil for this one. What's your view?
So for me, all of my diving has been driven by people that inspire me from the very, very beginning. And you probably heard a name throughout the day. Kirill was talking about him earlier on, Sheck Exley, otherwise known as Cave Diver #1. And he was one of the first real cave explorers that effectively designed his own equipment and realized that through the accidents were happening, he designed a training system. And so what we realized when we were talking to each other just before this panel is the solution to the problem that we're aiming to come to some sort of conclusion for in this panel is not going to be coming just from the explorers or the training agencies or the manufacturers or from business. It's going to have to be a symbiosis of all. What's really inspired me through this 2 days is exactly what we don't have on stage, the diversity that's out there in this audience. So you look at explorers, they basically often spent their whole life about it, but then we had this incredible talk from Tamara, who's just basically found 10 kilometers of cave as a young person. And so it can be done. Recently, I've given a presentation to a group of 25 8-year-olds. It was sent by Deep to a primary school, and they said, we wanted to go as an explorer and basically sell Deep. So the teacher told them what was coming about 2 weeks before, and we said, if you were put in the first habitat and you could do whatever you like, we want to hear this story, and we also want you to design a sea creature. So I turned up at this school with a Kirby Morgan helmet and a little ratchet and a frame so we could lower it onto each child's head and they could have a photo taken. And they all came to the front of the class with a homemade sea creature, paper mache, plastic bags, etc., etc. And the enthusiasm on their faces was amazing. I think what we need to do is go back to that route where going diving is just something that inspires. And for me, the exploratory side of it is, why would I go diving? What's the reason? So if you look at a lot of sports like football, Formula One, no disrespect to the manufacturers, we can't do this without them, but most of the fans don't follow the car, they follow the driver. but the driver can't do it without the car, then he can't do it without the team and the training to make that work. So the way forward to drive the next generation, move forward, I think is definitely going to be the symbiosis with everybody involved, which will include explorers, but also every other part.
And I think, you know, manufacturers in other niche activities, sports, have figured that out. I mean, if you look at mountaineering brands, those types of things, they have found those inspiring people, those explorers and those athletes, and they've glommed onto that, and they've told those stories. And so I think from a manufacturing point of view, you know, we have an opportunity to then work with, you know, the agencies to find the right people, to work with you guys to find the right explorers, and tell those really human, personal stories. I mean, today I would agree, Tamara's story was really emotional, deeply inspiring, and I think we have an opportunity as manufacturers in this industry to amplify those human stories and really promote that. And then that's what will get people to connect.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You know, climbing companies don't advertise by having a close-up of a carabiner.
Yeah.
They show the mountain, the guy using
and
the
the
equipment.
personal story, and I think this industry has a real opportunity there to promote and amplify those stories.
David?
Yeah, I definitely think that, you know, from what Phil was talking about here, as well, the manufacturers, I mean, it is important that we work together to understand really how we're going to address some of these issues as we move forward. And, you know, as we were speaking earlier, it's, you know, we understand there is a problem, and I think that we really need to work and really almost, it's been amplified here, as you said, and what are we actually going to do with all this information that we've learned here today? We all agree that there's a problem. How are we going to start to develop the solution? And is it a matter that it comes out of this group, that people that are here, we have the right people here, we have the professionals in the industry, you know, is it a matter that we pull together a focus group, we create a brainstorming session, and we just start working it slowly? And we're not, as an industry, going to be able to figure out alone. We need to use examples from other competitive industries, mountaineering, mountain biking, whatever it may be. But they've already figured it out. How are we going to do what they've done?
Damian, from a business point of view, what's your perspective?
I try to look at it as a product in the same way that we talked about it yesterday. So I see this massive passion, Phil, Andrea, Tamara. You know, you're doing incredible explorations, all of you, and I wish I had a fraction of what you guys, you know, have in terms of courage and persistence to do it. But this thing that you're creating is not getting down the channel. So there are a number of reasons why maybe it could be happening. Maybe filming underwater and photography is a lot harder. Okay, so somebody mentioned we need kids, maybe, or somebody filming it throughout the dive and taking care. That is one thing, because again, yes, it's easier to film skiing and other sports, but we are failing to transfer the product downstream. And this is something which I cannot really conceptualize. You see other sports like padel, for example, which simply exploded worldwide. And the sports we used to play, our generation, tennis, is being painted over and split into padel courts nowadays. So tennis courts are gone, and I have nowhere to play anymore, tennis, the sport. But padel is there. So I try to understand why. It's cheaper. It's 4 players instead of 2. It's a community, and after they go, so they use brighter colors. You know, I'm always trying to ask myself this. And I think we need to go back to ourselves and say, you discovered this beautiful wreck, and you went into this beautiful wreck, and it has an exceptional piece of history. But how are you going to transfer it to those school children who are 16, 17, 18, and move it across the flow and bring them into the sport before other sports wipe our sports out, you know?
So I said I want this to be a group discussion. So is anyone in the audience got any comments on that?
Hi, everyone. So this is not as much as a question, but an idea. As I was listening to you guys, I think there's a link missing. How do you transfer what you want to sell to young people? I'm a middle-aged man also. I'm also on my 50s. But I think some of the people here that made the presentation already might have an idea. Like artificial intelligence, VR. Young people are into social media and games. Do a VR of an exploration from Phil Short, where people might or can listen to what is happening and can see and experience and feel on their skin what an explorer is doing, and maybe you'll get there. That's just an idea.
Yeah, great idea.
Great idea.
Any ideas from anyone who isn't a middle-aged man?
Please.
Yeah, you're young, so you count, definitely.
And we've got one over there too.
And you definitely count as well.
I'm 17, and I'm ending the course scuba diving. And yesterday I was talking to.
You can say.
Okay. Yesterday I was talking to Orlando, and I went with this topic tone, and to be honest, there would be two types of people at my age that would come to diving, but it probably wouldn't have the same mentality that your generation has. It will be either the people who are more worried about nature and ocean, or the people who are worried about connections and networking and money. And I know that for some of you, the diving might not sound as something for networking and money, but nowadays on Instagram and TikTok, there is a lot of people who go to tennis and paddle and a lot of other sports just for networking as hobbies, and transform the diving into something Instagrammable. It will be like something that will be more pretty than about the records.
Yeah, that's a great point. You know, lots of young people now, their career aspirations is to be an influencer. So to be an influencer, you need content, and diving does or should be creating great content. That's, and I agree entirely about the environmental thing. You know, many of us got into diving, and I know many of you, because of wrecks, whereas that's now, I think, less important. And you're absolutely right. Environmental things are what are bringing young people in. Excellent.
Thank you very much for your help in explaining us a lot of interesting things and the fantastic presentations. Well, we have seen that we have a problem in diving industry, is that the courses, we have to increase the quality. But the courses are very badly paid. We charge very little money for a lot of work doing the courses. And as it was explained, sometimes there is a direct connection between the effort to raise the information and to give very good courses and the coming back, the payment from them. I think there is a solution, and I would like to ask the help of everybody here present. And I belong to SPAS, some of you know. Not CMAS also, but SPAS is a Portuguese non-profitable organization. And we focus completely towards scientific diving. And I think that if the governments manage to explain to people that biologists, or marine biologists, archaeologists, and so on, have to learn how to dive, and to learn to dive very well, so that diving is no longer a problem for their scientific activities. Maybe we will open a compulsory market, not compulsory, but a market that would pay back for students to get credits in the Bologna system. I don't know how it is outside Europe, but in Europe, if the students in the universities, they are told, if you do a good scuba diving course, you get a credit in your university career. Then we will have students that will be motivated, that will be willing to pay more for a good teaching, learning, and we will never gain again those students that once did tennis, later they do climbing, and they will do a try dive. Those are for the beach clubs and touristical places. But to establish something solid in the diving community, we have to have this recognition in the university systems that a good learning of diving gives them academic credits. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And there was over here.
Hi, yeah, I'm a woman, and I still define myself as young, so I'm standing up. No, I'm just comparing to other sports, and I'm a very recreational diver, not far from being at all of you's level. And in a lot of other sports, there was a lot of product evolution to make it more accessible, whether it is skiing with parabolic skis, even biking. Bikes became lighter, e-bikes came in. And I feel like with diving products, there's a certain pride for technical divers to still have something that is hard to manipulate and understand and use. And where is that accessibility to younger generation that want to learn fast, that want to be able to have access to the sports easier? And if we look again at other sports, and you mentioned paddle, it's it's like how we create that network and that inspiration in the practice too, by making the practice and the product evolve.
Yeah, that's interesting, because in other areas, things have evolved and people want the newest equipment. In diving, it's almost a matter of pride that my equipment is 20 years old. I've never had to change it. I'm still using what I was using 20 years ago.
Yeah, and I don't know who said it, but someone said in one of the talks that we're all still diving the same stuff from the 80s and 90s. It's just a different color. And I think, that's what's exciting, and Shearwater is trying. And so on one end of the spectrum, we are very much a technical diving brand and support technical divers and explorers and research, and try to advance, human development underwater, and push those limits. But at the other end of the spectrum, like, if no one comes into the sport, we're not going to have any technical divers in the long-term future. And so, I mean, we've taken the approach that this industry is missing out on some innovation, and we're trying, and even at that funnel, open funnel end. And so, we've done things like, we've partnered with the Avello Lab system, and we are trying new ways of diving. And so, we are manufacturing their jetpack now and coming out soon, kind of thing. So, little Shearwater plug, but we know that if we can make diving more accessible, a little bit easier, still safe, still with the proper training, then we can get more people falling in love with diving. And we want everyone to progress to technical diving, but we need enough people to get into it. And so if we can make equipment that is easier to use, just as safe, then for sure we can get more people into the sport.
So can you go into that in a little bit more detail? And don't worry if it's a plug for Shearwater, you sponsored the panel. what are you doing to try and bring people in and to address exactly that?
I
that
mean,
question?
specifically on the Velo system itself, I mean, it does make buoyancy very easy. So, does everyone know what it is? I mean, you guys are all divers in this room, so yeah, it's basically like a ballast system. You inject water into the tank. The tank has an air bladder. You basically get neutral buoyancy, and then you're neutral the entire dive, no matter what depth you're at. So we're working on that. We're manufacturing the electronics and basically what they call the jetpack, which is the pump and the electronic system for that. And for sure, I compare it to a manual car and an automatic car. I drive a manual car today. You guys are all technical divers. You know, you're going to stick with that system. But there are people that learn to drive, and hey, the manual or the automatic's a little easier. And if we can get people in and be like, oh yeah, that was easy, I'm good. Then maybe they want to try a manual racing car. But if we can get them into that and falling in love with diving, then more people, and that's better for us.
So I'm very familiar with the Velo system, and you know, the innovation is very cool. Definitely, it is unique and different. One comment that I may have about it is that don't we feel that is taking skill away from the diver, because now we're providing essentially a buoyancy system?
I think it's taking task loading away from the diver. So if you're thinking about multiple things all the time, you know, especially a new diver for sure. And yes, I do think that it makes buoyancy much easier. It is a skill that you don't really need to learn with the Velo system, for sure. But you may progress into other things, and then you will need to learn that skill.
Sure.
But from my perspective as, you know, recreational diver, I'm not a tech diver. You know, I enjoy it. If I haven't dove for 3 months and I go on a trip and I dive, it's like mental, the task loading it's a lot easier. I really enjoy it. So if we can get people that just love the sport, then they will progress. Yeah. 100%.
I think it's the
and look, it's not for everybody. I 100% agree. But when Velo Labs came to Shearwater, we were like, okay, it's innovation.
It is.
And,
absolutely,
and we're going to try, and we're going to see.
Yeah.
And we want to sponsor that innovation. I mean, we do it. You know, the deep guys are amazing. We work with JJ and all the other rebreather manufacturers on pushing the technical end. And we felt like the innovation is missing at the other end of the spectrum, and we wanted to get involved with that.
You know, when we talk about, at least for us here, because we're all technical divers, and it seems that the conversation goes to always technical diving.
Yeah.
You know, but the reality of it is that this business survives on the open water market, the recreational market. And it's difficult for us to have this conversation because we're always thinking the extremes. We're always thinking of, you know, cave diving, mine diving, wreck diving. But let's really start to dial it back a little bit and talk about where the industry needs to grow, and that is in the recreational. If the recreational industry grows, then it will simply grow into technical, because now you're going to have people that will matriculate out of that and want to go further with their training and what they're actually doing in the water.
And I think the Velo system, it sort of reminds me a little bit about e-bikes. You mentioned e-bikes. A lot of the cycling purists, they hate e-bikes. It's cheating. It's not, it's taking away the... But actually what you find is it's bringing people into cycling, and people who use e-bikes do more cycling because they don't get exhausted after they've gone up the first hill. So actually they're doing just as much exercise, but over a longer period of time. So it's a different dynamic. So yeah, it's...
And with any new technology, there will be technical divers that get their hands on it and start to play with it, and you could balance side mount with it, underwater, all these crazy things. So there will be people that grab it and manipulate it, because this industry loves those garage tinkerers that, tinker with their gear, and we're excited to just bring it forward, see what the industry does with it. And to your point, like, if more people just enjoy diving, I think that's a big win for us all.
Yeah, I mean, definitely falls in that
The
category
thing
of
about
innovation.
taking away is with the Avello system, why does a new diver say, actually, like the young lady here, why do they go, I want to do scuba? Because they see an image of someone floating in a shoal of fish, perfect, like they belong there.
I'm gonna cut in here for a second. On stage, I don't see women, I don't see youth, and I don't see the whole of the dive industry represented. We are at diving talks, and I see scuba diving, and I see technical diving. I don't see the single largest market of diving, which is breath hold diving, be it snorkeling to free diving. If you look at what's happening in free diving and the explosion in growth, we're talking about technical diving and scuba diving, and where, it's the, oh, woe is me, and it's crashing, and no new people are coming into it. And you look at free diving, and it is a youth-driven sport, recreation, lifestyle at this point. If you were to take a free diving shop and put it in a strip mall between two businesses, you would put it between a yoga studio and a Starbucks, because that is the demographic. It's 18 to 35. These people are lifestyle, nutrition, meditation. They're all the things that we want. And it is exploding in growth and market share and all of that sort of thing. But yet we talk about scuba all the time, and that's great, but we need to address the whole of the diving market as professionals. So if you have a dive shop and all you do is take your customer and right away try to get them into scuba, and you don't ask them, what is it that you're interested in your water adventure? And Catherine will talk about the water adventure thing, and like the equipment shop, you don't ask and try to get someone into mountain climbing. You say, what is it that you want to do? But yet in diving industry, we do that same thing. And then you look at the owners in the dive industry, and they're older, they're grayer. And how do you speak to that youth market when your instructor is my age, right, in their 50s, and doesn't quite relate to the youth market at the same time? And then you have manufacturers who have amazing pieces of equipment and have a freediving component to their equipment, but for the last 8 years, I still can't get them to put any of their marketing money into this sport. They have the best freediving product on the market, and they still won't go after this free money, this low-hanging fruit, by just putting a little bit of marketing into this group. So scuba is one thing, technical, rec, whatever, but you're missing the rubbing up against a whole market that is just there, because that market will age, that market will want to try other things, they want to stay in the water, but they will look at the next thing that can help them do that. So that's my Apple Box 2 cents.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely right.
Spot on. Spot on.
Yeah, very well said. I would agree with the point of and Kurt, Kyla hit it right on the head of, like, it just reminded me of getting kids involved in just water.
Yeah.
Like, I know there are some very successful dive shops that teach swimming lessons. You do the swimming first with the kids.
Yeah.
And then you can move on. And yes, free diving, like, get that in there first and let them progress. And maybe they decide never to scuba dive, but a lot of them will and continue on. So I 100% agree with that.
A third of my customers, when I was teaching, I would characterize it like this. A third of my customers were free divers, never scuba dived. A third of my customers were scuba divers and free divers. They might tend to one or the other. A third of my customers were ex-scuba divers because, quote unquote, they got tired of carrying all that heavy shit around. But they still love being under the water. The commonality is mask, fin, snorkel, water, adventure, lifestyle, passion, all of the things that we want, right? So why lose a customer if you're a dive shop? Why would you not cater to what they want in that underwater experience?
Yeah, the key thing you said there is that you get 3 times as many customers than if you just focus on one area. Yeah. Okay. So I think.
Wait, we got one over here.
Hello? Yes. I would pick up an aspect that we haven't speaking so much about, because we were speaking about the prices of the courses, but we are not speaking about the prices of everything else. I can say that when I was studying and I was moving to Sweden to dive in Sweden and studying, it was really difficult. I had 2 jobs extra while studying to afford to have shitty equipment that was leaking everywhere, and I see, and I was not diving with, nobody was in my age. Everyone was like at least 25, 30 years older. And I see now today, like when I'm working at the museum, people that comes to me, I want to dive, but I can't finance it. I see it, I'm the responsible for the buying things in our museums, the equipment and everything. And I see just in 4 years, scuba fins, rubber fins, was costing 130 euros, and now they are 280. Of course, that people try to find another sport, even if they are in love with water, they're going to change and doing something else because it's cheaper and they can afford it, and they can do also other stuff. They can do maybe 2 sports instead to put everything in diving and maybe eat noodles just for dinner, just because they want to go out and dive a wreck on a boat that is costing 200 euros. So that's something that I think we should take. I don't have the solution, but I don't know.
We talked about the pricing courses and putting the prices up and more quality, but that's the downside of it, isn't it? Then you can price it out. Coming back to the point about universities, that's how I learned to dive at university, and I think that is a fantastic way of getting younger people in. The university had equipment that we didn't even need to rent it. We used it. So universities and schools, I think, is definitely an area to focus on. Get people in, make it affordable to get them in, and then when they move out and get well-paid jobs, and they can then afford to buy their own equipment, but at least you've got them in.
Can I just give also a small, is this working? Yeah? We are talking about young kids this, young kids that, young kids to the right, young kids to the left. But when was the last time that the agencies asked something to young kids? So I would start by asking the young kids what they want. Because we are trying to figure out a lot of stuff, but we don't address the real problem. And that is to ask young kids what they want. Ask young kids why they don't dive. Ask young kids that dive why they decided to dive. So I would start by talking with those that we want to bring in, and I would just like throw this into the fire. I would drop the theory. I'm always saying this, and kill the manuals, kill the learning, kill everything. You go to an airfield, you get inside a plane, you jump from 10,000 feet in the air, and you don't read one line. You don't read one line of a manual. You go to the crane, you jump from, and you don't read one line. You just sign, of course, something saying that if I get killed, it's my fault. Okay? But agencies can have the liability releases that they need. It happens in all sport, Mark.
In Europe, we're not allowed to kill people and fall back on
Mark,
a liability.
No, but there's always a liability release somewhere, and the manuals, you read the manual, the open water diver manual, 80% of it is liability release. So I would really go there. I will kill the manuals, and I would ask the kids what they want to do. It's just my 10 cents.
So it almost sounds like the first action item would be create a survey, and include your free diving, include your recreational diving, and where would you aspire to go to?
So I'm thinking scuba diving is usually something that is not really a daily sport. It is not what you can't compare to tennis, because it's more like a hobby that you usually do once a year during your vacation. Most of the divers once a year travel somewhere, and experience scuba diving for the 10 days that they are in a beautiful space, beautiful area. And maybe that is also declining, maybe because of the expectation. If you see all the beautiful videos, maybe you don't want to dive anymore in Malta or something like that, because you don't expect to see a humpback whale there, and going somewhere else is even more expensive. And the thing is, if I want to go with children, they want to go into clubs. They want to join a dive club. They want to do a summer vacation camp with a tent at a lake. That works quite well. 2 weeks with a tent at a lake, having a complete dive camp with children. That sometimes is a nice thing. And but actually, they want to go on Mondays, on Tuesdays, once a week, going to their dive club, meeting their friends there, diving. Then they can start with free diving, then they can involve via scuba diving, but they need the regular touch and they need the society. And that's the thing I think at the moment is missing, because if you go to a dive center, you will not find so many that will offer this at the place where you live, that you have the chance to regularly get in touch with the sport and really get slowly into the sport.
Yeah, you know, when you touch upon dive clubs, I think they're great. They're I know, at least, and I'm not sure how it's done elsewhere, but at least I know in the States, you know, a lot of the dive clubs, you know, they're late in the evenings. They're usually held at a bar or someplace like that, a back room that, you know, so the adults can come in, and it's almost prohibitive for kids to go to the dive clubs in the U.S. anyway. I mean, is that something that is different in the UK? That dive clubs exist that younger people are going to?
Tamara, are you commenting on that, or
yeah,
go ahead?
Can you hear me there?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going to say that we're talking about having the kids go to the dive shops, but we could actually bring them here and have them meet Phil and tell them the adventures he's done, and they can meet, you know, the actual divers with our tanks and our rebreathers and our gear, and we can show them the same movies that we saw from Alex. And but I don't know which event has a day for kids where all the local schools can come for free and be for one morning or a couple hours in direct contact with the people who are going to transmit the purpose. Because unfortunately, we told the world that diving is fun, but we didn't tell them that diving is a purpose in itself. So when we market it, then we have to tell people that I dive with a purpose, but is there really diving with no purpose? Like, who here goes diving with no purpose? Diving is a purpose, no? At least for most of people sitting here. So if we, of course, we can change the manuals and we can do a lot of things that are very high level, but next year in Diving Talks, we can have a panel of 5 kids who are sitting in front of us, and we can have an audience of whatever ages you can invite here from the local schools and the local universities, and then we can take the notes. Because right here, it's like, I don't know how many people talking about the ones that are not present. So just to say, if you have the power to open this up in DIMA, in Boat Show, in the Paris Show, in Diving Talks, in Dive Expo in Belgium, like any forum where there are divers and explorers present is a forum for the young people. We should not have to invite them. They should be here with us. And I don't have children to bring to the show, but next time, please, if you have children, bring them, because there are empty chairs here, and, you know, kids are small. We can sit them on the floor anywhere. They don't need a ticket.
Well said. It's a great idea. Yeah. Anyone else want to chime in on that topic?
Yes, she is.
Catherine?
Thank you. You know, we are talking about gear, courses, and all the stuff. And I'm a father of a daughter. She's 3.5 years old. And you know, guys and girls, she's already a good swimmer. a beginner in freediving, and already she's a speleologist, and even participated in one exploration project of Fedrai Cave. And I can see the process how, let's say, our audience growing. And you know, maybe I'm wrong in particular months. Maybe Kirk can help me with that. But you know, there is some time after a new kid is born, when the kid is just naturally accepts water, and that kid can be in the water, and knowing that, my daughter started swimming from let's say 1 month. When she had one month old, she was already swam somehow, and her first, let's say, free diving happened when she was 2 months. And now she is just very active, and she's a swimmer. She loves water, and almost every day she swims. And I think that what is the most important, that the industry starts from the beginning. First of all, if you know, I don't know if you know or not, but most of the swimming pools, governments swimming pools, they start to accept kids only from 6 months. So that period of time, they skip it. When a kid naturally loves water, like running, jumping, and etc., etc. So, and I think if we really want to increase the audience and make this kind of sport natural, we should think from the beginning how to improve the ability of the kids to dive, because it depends, naturally depends with the age. And secondly, we have to improve that infrastructure. Because, for example, my wife and I, we spent a lot of time to find a proper club, kids club, which take and took responsibility to start to teach swimming the kids, let's say, one month old. So I think everything starts here. And before even freediving, of course, the kids, they are taught how to swim, right? Because the gear and courses and all the stuff, our industry starts from swimming. So we have to think, I think, to that direction. Yeah, and of course, as parents, we have to give, to try as much sport as possible. And tennis is also good. It doesn't matter which kind of sport to do, but the idea not to be always, let's say, under digital plunge, but in in real world.
Yeah. As early as possible, absolutely. Yeah. Catherine has been trying to get the mic for a while.
I would just like to invite all of us to consider rebranding our industry. Instead of us being dive shops, I'd like us to become aquatic adventure centers. And instead of concentrating on teaching how to dive, what I'd like us to do is invite connection by showing our future clients why we dive and what they can see when we show them how to use the gear. Let's flip the script from how to why, because what they really want is to connect with us. Our clients are seeking connection to the underwater world, and we keep insisting that we teach them how to scuba dive. Let's get with the why, because it's, I mean, again, I'm all about emotions and storytelling, but if we stick with the why we dive and what they can see and make it about them, that's when we create the connection that they're craving. And it's what makes them open their hearts and their wallets, and it's what grows our industry.
Yeah, I
For
think
coming to my TED Talk.
that links very much to what Damian was saying. He's come at it from a very business-oriented, define the product, but now we've got the emotional side of it as well. So, yeah, that's a great point.
Hi, with the story of Catherine, I want to tell a short story. I have two sons. They are now 16 and 13 years old. But when they were in primary school, the oldest one asked me, "Can you come to my class and tell something about diving?" And I did that. I talked 1 hour about diving. I took my tank, I took my BCD, I took everything, my whole kit. And all the children, they were so quiet and listening, and it was fantastic. When my youngest son was in group 8 or something, he asked the same, and I did it again. And in his group, they asked me to come a second time, and the second time I told a lot about pollution and the effect on the seas. If you throw something on the street, it can come in the seas, and what does that do with birds, turtles, etc. And we all can start with this. Go to a local school and tell something about diving. We can do that. It was really fun.
Phil and I were talking about this earlier. We've both been into schools, and you know what? The schools, they love it, because I don't know about in other countries, but in the UK, there are certain things on the curriculum that they must cover. So they jumped at the chance of getting free labour to cover that. So and that's something we can all do.
Yeah, for sure.
Great point. Yeah.
So if we are talking about children, then they are never without the parents. When I started to dive, I was 11 years old, and this was only possible because of my mom, because she was searching for, okay, she needs an instructor, but my parents had nothing to do with diving, so they were also like, are we really sure we want to put our daughter in deep water where we have no idea what's happening? So what she was doing was looking for an instructor who's not going diving with me, who's going snorkeling with me. So I actually think Kirk's point was really good, because this is already something where the parents feel way more safe. They are like, yeah, of course, a little bit diving, I can do that too. And then they get to know the instructor, and they can be like, oh, okay, our child is safe, it's happy, I can see that the instructor is treating my child good. And then they can go further slowly.
Thank you. Yeah, I was gonna call on you, so I'm very glad that you put your hand up.
I'm deviating a little bit with this question. I teach, that's my other job, from doctoral students all the way up to primary. Now the question is, correct me if I'm wrong, but the manuals, which Damian said we can also find for free, whether it's for a child or for an adult, the program is the same. So we're expecting children, or we're trying to teach children stuff which is designed for adults.
Yeah.
And I think this is something we really ought to think if we really want to attract kids. I'm sorry. Well, in that case, we have to think about something else, because what we're doing, we're still giving them manuals.
Yeah, that's why I think, and again, talking about sort of innovation, when we introduce something new, the adults hate it. E-learning, oh no, that doesn't work, it's got to be a paper manual. That's rubbish. For kids, they want visual, they want video. Putting just a manual online and getting them to read on a screen rather than a paper manual is no better. But interaction, video, somebody mentioned VR earlier, those are the things that will appeal to kids. But I was going to ask, do you want to talk a little bit about the diploma and what you're doing for not younger kids, but I think you're aimed at teenagers to bring people into the industry?
Thank you. No, we're actually thinking of running a program for school leavers, meaning from 16-year-olds, people who finished secondary school. And that would incorporate, let's say, from the beginning of, call it open water, all the way up with some diving. But we're also looking to give them skills and competencies, whether it's to prepare them even theoretically to go in the industry. Now, whether they'll be working in the industry diving proper, whether they'll be in tourism, but we're trying to give them a pathway. And what we're trying to do as well is that will include a, let me call it an apprenticeship. So people can go, they can shadow and diving, see what happens in a diving center. Obviously, there'll be the people in the diving industry mentoring and taking them out, maybe even take them to add on with experience with diving. Hopefully, after this, apart from, as we say in Malta, giving them a piece of paper, which actually would give you entrance to university if you want to with it, some of them, hopefully, will also go into the industry itself. For now, it's still on plan. Hopefully, in a year's time, if Linda will find some time for me, I will be able to explain a little bit more about it. Thank you.
There's a question at the back, and then Kirk, and then I want to move on a little bit because I think we've got a good view of what the problem is.
Yes, a lot of things were said and good reasons, but is diving, scuba diving, actually a sport? Or is it an activity? Mm-hmm. What I think, one of the things that I think that lack here is the word competition. Everyone does a sport for a competition. I can give you the example of my activity. When we start the diving course at the military, we always do more autonomy, fastest way around an area, the best guy that orients underwater, the one that can carry more weight. And that is something just to think about, to change scuba diving from one activity where you can see things, take very expensive gear, and to have a lot of fun, but it's something that could also be a competition that lacks, and that it is present in every other sport.
And then there was a lady to the side, I think, had a hand up.
Okay, I was gonna speak for Kyla, but she wants to say something, but I love the competitive side, and I think that's why freedivers tend to be a younger age group, because you have that competitive drive. And Kyla has something to say about getting people's attention, kids.
Just about having the people come into classes, it works, but some kids will listen, some kids won't, because the people talking to them are sometimes like 4 times their age.
Yeah.
So why not have people their age going in and talking to them, and have like them as their age as the face for it?
Yeah, and that's a great point, and you've got to start one step at a time. So it was a point, again, we were talking about earlier. To say that there are no youngsters coming into diving is wrong. I mean, there's an example over there. Phil and I know an instructor in the UK that's always surrounded by young students because he's a young instructor. So we need those young instructors to inspire the young students, yeah, and to send the young instructors into the schools. Yeah, that's a great point. And then, yeah, go ahead.
So I think we're the ones closing our circle. How many of you work with diving? Free diving, scuba diving, I mean, probably a lot. And I came here and I know that all of you are the majority, I'm sorry, dives. But I met an ex-lawyer, I met an engineer. I met someone who is working on habitats for humans underwater. I met a stunt. And that's the amazing thing that most of the young people are looking when we go to events. It's not go and met someone that we met something about someone that we already know. We know you dive. I want to meet you. I want to meet something different, something that we don't know, and it's probably amazing.
Thank you.
So I just step in and then I hand it over. I think it's a perfect discussion. So I'm thinking from the inspirational part, you're already doing a tremendous and awesome job. It's like if you see some of the things that you're doing, we are all inspired. And I think that is nothing that is the problem of the young people. They just get one of the BBC documentaries, of one of your videos and so on, and they will be immediately inspired. I think the problem with the young people is the opportunity. It's a thing if they have parents that can go with them to a dive trip and take them with them and so on, it's a chance where to go then. If you go into a class and tell them how cool diving is, they will all say, oh, it's amazing, I want to be a professional diving. If you tell them something about the cosmos, they will all try to be an astronaut afterwards. It's not the problem to inspire them, it's a problem to give them also a chance to take the advantage. Like if we are thinking about the people here, the young people, they had the chance because of their parents that made it possible and about the situation. But I think a lot of people who would love do not have the chance to just easily access the sport.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's not a single solution. We do this and then everything's fixed. We need to inspire them. We then need to enable them. We need to support them. So there's multiple levels to it. Yeah. So there was another question here. Yeah.
Mark, this is over. I think we have to resume. There was a lot of people interested in contributing and saying things. What we can do is that we can resume this topic in the 2026 edition, but it's 6:20.
So that's what I really don't want to do. I don't want to go away from here. We've got all these great ideas. Well, first of all, one idea.
So you don't want to close the debate?
No, I want to keep this going. Do I have a support? So one idea that we can do to actually make things a little bit better and to keep the discussion going, not for another half an hour, but for the next year to actually take things forward. I don't want to be sitting here in a year's time going, oh, remember that conversation we had last year? We should do something about that. So Phil, one concrete suggestion that we can do to improve things.
I can't remember what I said. What did I say? Sorry, it's been a long weekend.
I mean, from my point of view, I don't know of a global industry association that is taking action to solve the problem. I think we all are part of individual, whether it's agency, manufacturer, exploration, business. I think there needs to be a global collective, and whether that's official or not, we need to do something, and we need to do it now. Because like you said, I don't want to come back here next year and say, man, we had a lot of cool ideas, we didn't do anything.
Yeah, we did. When we were talking about this, we were like, it would be much better for us to come back here next year with what we did, even if it was just a little, at least to say that we had recognized that the issue was, what a problem was, and we started to look for solutions. I think, Arlindo, you mentioned a survey. If that working group could come together from, you know, as you say, all the various areas of within the industry, create a survey that will apply to younger people. And then we look at the social media experts here and we get that out there. And we ask the younger people to provide feedback. And even if we use social media platforms to get those answers, and we have somebody, but at least we're starting to come up with an idea. And we have to start somewhere, so.
So this is being recorded, right? Hands up, all those who are interested in keeping in contact, a group of us, to work on this, to do something about it. Okay, you're all on camera, so we'll work out how to do that. Arlindo is offering to work out how to do that. I think this is a self-selecting room. Anyone who's still here at 6:30 on a Sunday evening talking about this is motivated to do it. And we've got the right balance, not up here, but across the room. So yeah, I would be very happy to be involved and to work with Arlindo to get a group of us to try and actually take some action as opposed to just talking about this. Okay.
I want to ask the question, is there actually a problem? So we're talking about youth coming into diving, and it seems like, there's not enough divers, new divers. But what is the market demographics driving this? I don't know about in where I live and my friends, the amount of my friends who haven't had kids is significant. Mm-hmm. That in Western populations, we are shrinking. China, by end of century, will be 500 million people. So is the participation of the kids that we think we're losing, is it actually normal from what it was 20, 30 years ago? It's just there's less kids being born. So is there actually a problem, or is our market overdeveloped? Do we have too many manufacturers? Do we have too many dive shops for what would be the bottom growing of the market? So Damian, I would suggest, from the business point of view, what is the actual market to the demographics of the population?
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I think, one of my questions is, do we need to go back to the 80s and 90s, or are we just sort of harping back? We need to move on. We need to deal with the world as it is now, not go back to the way it was. I think there is a problem. I think we're not, there are kids out there that should be coming into all sorts of diving, but aren't. But also, I think one of the things we can do is actually talk about the success stories. The instructor that does have the young students. So freediving is a massive success story. We've got lots of dive centers that are regularly running things for schools. So yeah, talk about the success stories so that if we've got success over here, we can adopt that over there as well. But yeah, actually some market research. If only we had a business expert on the panel who volunteered to help, then...
Hi, sorry, I'm curious. How old were you when you started diving?
So I did my first try dive when I was 10. And at the time, you couldn't dive in the UK until you were 18 or whatever. So I then officially learned to dive when I went to university at 18. And I was an instructor in my early 20s. So, why should I be criticizing young instructors when I was doing exactly the same thing? Yeah, and I want to encourage people to do the same thing.
So I was 10 years old when I got certified, and by the time that I was 13 to 14 years old, I was working in a dive store filling scuba tanks. And by the time that I was 18 years old, I was a certified instructor. And my career is just, that was my passion, and I followed the dream, so.
17?
I was early 20s, and I was lucky to have parents that asked if I wanted to do it, and I was super excited because none of my friends did it, where I also grew up in the furthest place from an ocean in the middle of North America. So, but no, I was really lucky to have family that was doing it and then brought me along, so.
I was 20, so quite a late starter, so I don't really have any regrets, but I wish I had started earlier. But after I started, I just got bitten so much. I've got this really weird, nerdy bit of statistics that I haven't missed a single calendar month in those 35 years since I did my first dive. So at least every month, ever since I started, I've done at least a dive. So yeah, it's fantastic.
That's the thing. For me, it's always been very natural to be underwater. My dad used to be a dive instructor, so he introduced me to this world, and I've loved it ever since. But it's been tricky to grow in the diving industry, because of course I wanted to be a marine biologist, a scientific diver, and you first have to do your bachelor, and then your open water, and then your second star, and then blah, 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 blah. Do your master's, do your internship, try to get certified as instructor, then go to technical diving, and it's a lot of certifications, a lot of money for a student. And yeah, I think that it's not that difficult doing your tri-scuba. It's more overwhelming to grow in this industry. Yeah, exactly.
Damian in his presentation had a statistic, 12% increase, but then a 5% decrease to people converting. So yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, if I may add a point on what you just said.
Can I share another point of view? I am 30 years old, and I think all of us are talking about simplifying everything, but then we complain, not in this conversation, but we complain that all divers are like very shallow. But I think the missing point, if you talk, when I dive, I dive always with older people. When I ask what was your motivation, and I think Phil talked about this, all of you, or almost all of you, talk about magazines and people that inspire you. So I think if we don't simplify, but is another point of view, don't simplify, but okay, talk about if you saw like Formula 1 that explode now. Why explode? Because we have like some heroes, not heroes, but I think if Phil, Tamara, and some persons like share some footage or POVs or something like that, you can put in my generation in the 20s a feeling that, okay, this is my hero, not my hero, but I want to achieve this thing. And even if the thing is complex, I will do it, because you have in Formula 1 a very big explosion, but if you only simplify, think about it. The people will do, just want to try scuba diving. Okay, this is so simple. I already know everything. Bye-bye. If you put like some layers in it, okay, you have this type of diving that it's very complex. It's very good. It's very, very cool. But we have like tier levels. I don't know how to say, but okay, you can train to be like a Formula 1, but you can also drive carts, also drive electric vehicle. So you can have tiers. But if the bigger guys, the bigger sharks, share some footage, I know that, okay, it's my footage, I don't want to share it. But if we do like a thing with not financial reasons, but if we share some of you guys, some heroes, some footage of POVs, you can put inside of my generation some purpose to dive. And Phil already talked about this. And we are always talking about young, but then you have 60 years old guys that dive, trying to put 8 years old children to dive, and then you will die, the industry will die, because my generation don't dive. So we need to change that gap.
I think, yeah, you've summed up the problem perfectly there. And Tamara, I'm going to come to you next, because you're the example I'm going to use. I didn't know what tomorrow was doing. That, I learned that today. And I'm in the industry. And if I don't know about it, how is someone who's outside the industry ever going to know about it? So we need to get better at promoting tomorrow so that we're getting her in front. And social media isn't the answer, because social media, you see your friend's stuff. You see the stuff you're already interested in. You don't see the stuff that you never thought about. So we need to get outside of our little bubble. A lot of us were inspired by Cousteau. Who's the new Cousteau? And how do we get that in front of them tomorrow? So how are we going to promote you?
Well, I was going to say, I was a TDI ambassador. So the fact that you don't know me, but I won't take it personally.
Personally.
Touche. And the only reason why I mention it is because I received a very nice package by mail, which certainly costed some money to the brand, and came with some gifts and this, and then nothing more happened. I was never asked to do anything for TDI. And my photo was on social media, which certainly some people saw it, but there was no purpose to it. There was no ambassadorship. There was no engagement. And so maybe other ambassadors were also like, okay, so now I'm a TDI ambassador, and the next year someone else will take my spot, and then we will go on. So the question is, can you go back to TDI and say the ambassador has to actually do some work for linking to those people we want to get to, or how much budget are we actually going to assign for specific actions that are not specifically selling, but to getting into those quote-unquote markets, because children, I don't want to call them market, but how do we get to the schools? How do we teach an entire class how to dive, if they want to, of course? And then the other thing that I was going to say, because I met Josh at DIMA one time, and we talked about the brand and the brand support, and I said, I am very grateful for the brand support, but what I really want is to work with you and with the brand, because I'm not interested anymore to just have my photo on a screen for people to see it. I want to have some work to do, I want to come and tell you, you know what, we need scholarships. So can you sponsor 100 open water classes? Can you sponsor the IDC for some people in the community? Like, this is my message, right? So anyway, this is a question that everybody can take home. What marketing budget, or what sales budget, or what, call it what you need budget, I'm going to assign next year, so that when I sit here at the panel, I can say, well, I was in that video where everybody got their fingerprint taken, and my commitment was to go and think about it and go and ask in my team and in my roundtables what can be done in the practical side. And then maybe we can have the panel at the beginning of the event, so there is some talk that can continue, because this is perfect. After we go for dinner, we go for lunch, and that's when we can sit and actually put it on a napkin,
Agreed.
Yep.
Okay. Just a suggestion as an actual form of media. I just turned 30 like 2 weeks ago, so I've never felt older.
You're old now then.
No,
You're
off the mark. Never felt older. Yeah, back hurts so. Are you guys familiar with American Ninja Warrior? That show? And just like, what could be the scuba diving version of that? Making it more of a horizontal, piggybacking off the competitive kind of aspect and suggestion, like a horizontal sort of plane, and got like in the American Ninja Warrior, they'll highlight, the athletes that come in and show what they're doing in the world. And how they're involved.
I think Dan did a buoyancy challenge, which is a very small version of that. But yeah, that's a great idea. And that links in with the competition side.
Sure,
Yeah,
right.
it was mentioned, yeah.
And showing how certain people are involved in this industry. Not to necessarily inspire 15-year-olds to do backflips while underwater welding, right? But to just have them interested and exposed to it in a way that I know that would have been something I would have found cool as a kid. And then that could lead to however they may try to get involved in scuba. Anyway, just a suggestion.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Yeah, Arlindo is giving me the wind it up. You've gone on long enough. So yeah, thank you for the participation and the all the feedback. You know, really valuable, and I think there's lots of stuff that we can take on board. And as I said, continue working together. We'll work out how we can do that. But I would like to have, exactly as Tamara said, at the beginning of the next conference, well, this is where we've moved on, and this is what we've done, and then use that next conference to discuss what else we can do. So.
Bring the figures, Mark.
Yep. Fantastic. Yeah, thank you very much. You know, I think we've had exactly as I wanted. We've not actually said that much, but we've got some fantastic discussion from the group as a whole. So thank you for your participation.
Before the shot, vais tirar a fotografia? Just before the shot, so if I understood correctly, you and I, Mark, have some homework.
Yep.
Of course, I have I don't know if they are here or not, but I have the contacts of people that attended the show. So we will build up something to try to bring to the 2026 edition of the Diving Talk some conclusions or some suggestions, or so we will do this together.
Some actions.
I would say actions.
Yeah.
I would definitely say
Actions. Okay, so you will all be invited to be a part of a group that will address the questions that were discussed here, and we will try to bring some actions, some things that we can action on for at the next the 2026 edition of the Diving Talks. I would just